But this whole system, there's nothing best interests of child. Now, of course, severe cases of child neglect, child abuse, things like that. Absolutely, we need a family court system for that.
Right.
But we also need a competent DFPS and CPS organization, which we know we don't have.
We don't have that either. Exactly.
All you got to do is hit Google, and they're constantly violating the federal orders. They're lying to federal judges. And they're doing things left and right. And there's almost no repercussions for them.
No, there really aren't to a large degree. There was a judge down in Houston a few years ago who fined CPS, but he awarded the plaintiffs certain fees, but he limited it because he knew that by making it what maybe it should have been, had it been a private company,
it would open the floodgates.
Well, not just that, but the taxpayers would have to pay. He didn't want to burden the taxpayers. And I say, you know what? You need to start burdening the taxpayers, because the taxpayers are okay with this injustice as well, so long as it does not affect their pocketbook too much. You know, and if you started to say, okay, taxpayers, because of these things that happened, your taxes are going up, and this is to recoup for losses of CPS or whatever, maybe you would start to see some outrage. I'm not...
Well, but see, I don't even buy that argument, because in 2016, I believe, I traveled down to Sugar Land to meet with the state representative, because they were introducing a bill in the legislature. So my area is attachment. Right. And I was trained in this thing called TBRI, Trust-Based Relational Intervention. It was developed at TCU, at the Institute of Child Development in Fort Worth. I serve as the assistant director of research out there, so I'm an expert in it. I've trained probably well over 10,000 people in it. Okay. You know, lectures, seminars, but I've trained families and homes and nonprofits. I've trained judges, attorneys, CPS, DFPS. But the problem is...
In the courtroom?
The problem is, it's something, if I tell you how to do it, you're not going to know how to do it.
Right.
Like if a mechanic told me how to work on a diesel engine and set me loose, I'd ruin it. And so the problem is, I can tell you all day, but if I don't show you, I'm not really teaching you. Well, they introduced a bill to train all of their DFPS, CPS staff in TBRI, which sounds like a great idea. And that's the thing I do. That's the thing I'm an expert in. And people got really excited. It was I want to say it was $50 million, or it was a very large sum of money. And so I went and met with the author of this bill and said, hey, you know who I am? He said, yes, I do. And I said, you know what I do? I said, yes, I do. I said, why are you screwing off $50 million? And he's what? And I said, because no one will learn how to do anything. You'll just get to check a box.
It's the box.
That you trained in. But if you took that money and trained, a handful of people in each region how to do it, and you employed them, they could actually go in the home and teach the parents of these children how to do it. And so it wasn't for a lack of money. He said, we've got money pouring. We've got money we're trying to find stuff to do with. So when a judge says, I don't want the taxpayers to pay, all it's going to do is take it out of that slush pot that they spend. It's like I was in the military, the end of the fiscal cycle. We bought a bunch of stuff and give it away.
Yeah, exactly.
Brand new printers. Here you go. Because they needed to spend the money or they didn't get as much next year.
Right. So what you're saying is extremely interesting here. But I want to go back to some of the attachment theory that you were talking about. The experiment with the monkeys, which we also know now applies to the humans as well. If there's that initial separation, is there a certain length of time that basically influences that monkey or the child? I mean, is there a way to repair that brokenness later on in life?
Yes and no.
Okay, tell me about that.
Okay, so we know there are general milestones. So my baby is born, my little amazing infant. All a baby under 6 months of age is a giggly, poopy eating machine. That's it. They're not really everything is developing. Their vision's coming online. They've already got the hearing, their sense of smell. They're putting everything in their mouth, but they're just exploring the world. Right. At about 6 months of age, the attachment cycle starts. Okay. So then they start having this bond with the parent, with the caregiver, and it starts to develop. At about 18 months of age is another big jump where it really starts kicking in, and typically that's where we see something called stranger danger. A lot of people have heard of. So in that, up to about 36 months of age is another big milestone. And the way we know this is there's some amazing researchers in Britain, and there was a time when there were tons of Romanian orphans because the dictatorship was forcing people to have babies, and so they would have babies and dump them in the orphanages. And so they were, and people were adopting Romanians left and right. Well, in Britain, they took this opportunity. They started following these Romanian babies who were adopted into Britain, and they followed them for over 30 plus years.
Right.
And a child who is adopted before the 6 months of age, or removed and placed before 6 months of age in a stable environment where they're going to stay, doesn't really have any problems because they haven't started that attachment cycle.
Interesting.
After 6 months of age, there's disruptions, there's difficulties, there's higher rates of mental illness, learning disorders, physical growth, all those things. And then 18 months, after 18 months, it's an even bigger issue and more difficulties. And then after 36 months, severe issues, severe difficulties. Because each one of those is like a milestone where my system gets stronger and I become more attached, even if it's an unhealthy parent.
Right.
So even if I'm an unhealthy parent and you remove my child, even if it's the best thing and I should never have a child, you're still going to hurt that child's attachment system because even though it's not healthy, that's all they know.
Right.
And it breaks that bond. But can you repair it? Yes. You can repair it with very intentional things. That's, the attachment-based interventions. They can do amazing things, but you have to know what you're doing and why you're doing it.
Right.
Because this child now has effectively brain damage because you affect the development of the brain. In severe cases, it can actually show up on MRIs as brain damage.
Interesting.
And so you have to approach it in a very special. So anytime you remove a child from a parent, you are causing a form of brain damage. You are abusing that child.
Yeah.
You are damaging that child, and it potentially will last a lifetime. And we know for many of them, it does.
Okay.
Can you repair it? Yes, with very intense. But it's almost like, hey, Jeff, I'm going to stab you in the chest, and then I'm going to put a tourniquet on it.
Yeah.
Well, how about you just not stab me in the first place?
So basically then, taking what you're saying, when the courts are separating families and children from parents, it is a form of abuse.
It is absolutely abusive to the child.
So, I mean, judges are committing abuse, the attorneys are committing abuse, the spouse maybe who's filing for divorce against the protest of another person is committing abuse, the people that are supporting it. It is abuse to the child.
No, it's absolutely abuse.
Yeah. And it was interesting when you're talking about the Romanian orphans. I know somebody in particular who was talking to me about just that very issue. And a person adopted a Romanian orphan. And there are things that have been overcome in time, but you could see the difference between a young baby who was always with his or her parents versus someone who was stuck in an orphanage and then adopted, doesn't even know who his or her parents are at this point in time, but adopted, 2-3 years of age or something like that.
Yeah, because you can do devastating effects.
So what are these effects on society when you see this happening? Because we talked about the breakdown of the family, or the attack on the family is what it comes down to. And then you also see, when I was growing up, was there crime? Yeah, there was some, but from my perspective, I've seen crime go up like this.
Well, that's
and I've seen the divorce rate go.
The disintegration of the nuclear family.
Yeah. Fatherless
homes.
Yeah.
We know from research, and no offense, ladies, but there's a large body of research that shows that children who are raised by fathers, if there's a divorce, outperform children who are raised by mothers across every single indice. So every single measure that we look at, raised by a father, and whether people want to hear it or not, men and women are different.
Right.
And from a biblical perspective, men were put to lead their homes.
Right.
And if you don't have a man leading the home, you don't have a leader. And I'm sorry, women, and I know some of you are single moms, and yes, there were single moms, and that's a different circumstance. But if I choose to destroy my family,
right,
I'm choosing to damage my child. But the capricious way of the courts, they don't care about the research, they don't know about it. They could really care less. They just do what they're going to do and what they've always done.
Right.
I think the rates of placement in Texas, it's over 80% for the mother.
It's about it's over 90% actually.
So it's over 90%. So from a statistical...
That may be changing because there was a law that we got passed a little bit, that helped a little bit this past session.
So let's roll it down to 80. So let's say 80.
No, well, that's really being very optimistic.
I'm going to be super generous here. I'm going to roll it down to 80.
Okay.
And so we've got 20%, and we'll take out all the grandparents and other people who fight. We'll just say it's moms and dads.
Okay.
So mom's 80, dad's 20.
Yeah.
So, all right, so I got 20% dads, and let's say that everything's equal across them. The number of people with drug addiction, mental health issues, the life difficulties, and we'll just flip that 20% over on the 80, and we'll take them off. So that leaves us 60%. Right? So I've taken the 20% dads away, the equal 20% for moms. We've just nullified that. So that leaves this huge 60% chunk that is absolutely inexplicable any other way than bias. Unless, of course, 60% of men who enter marriage and that end up in the courts are severe abusers. You can't argue that they don't want their kids or they wouldn't be going to court for them.
Right.
Where are all the jail? Why aren't they in prison if they're severe abusers? Where are all the CPS cases on them if they're severe abusers? So what explains this huge, massive chunk? You see this almost nowhere else. When things are, if you say they're equal, it should be about 50-50.
Right.
40-30, 57 is still out of whack, but it's not, and it hasn't been.
Especially when you look at the law of large numbers.
And it hasn't been. And you say, well, maybe it's an anomaly. Well, but it's an anomaly every single year going back
in every single county in the state of Texas.
To the 70s.
I did the statistical analysis based on some data last year from the Attorney General's office. I think it was November 29th, 2020. And every single county was an outlier to what the norm should have been.
Oh, yeah.
And some of them were like, not just merely outliers. I mean, it was impossible that this could happen again and again and again, be replicated.
Oh, yeah. Well, attorneys will freely, because I know a bunch of them, outside of being on tape or in a courtroom, in a courtroom, it's a huge game. It's a wink, wink, nod, nod. Oh no, everything's wonderful over here. Don't look at us, But everybody in the courtroom's in on it. It's like an act. It's like a play they put on, and they'll tell you straight up. Fathers have almost no chance of getting their kids in most states. But especially down south, in the more conservative the state, actually the worse it is. And you will be extremely lucky to get standard expanded visitation. If you get 50-50, that is like a rock star Super Bowl moment. And the husband might be like, but she's drunk and smoking crack. And they're like, yeah, but the court doesn't care. Because she's a mom.
I've heard that. I've not gone through any of this stuff from the first-hand part, but I've known a lot of people. I've talked with them. I know sometimes the courts also rule against moms too. It does happen. There's always outliers. So nothing's 100%.